Hello everyone, my name is Captain Cannon, and as my first video, I wanted to tell you all about why I think Ghost of Tsushima is a perfect game. In the middle of summer 2020, well after the lockdown had started, Sucker Punch Productions released a spectacular game about a samurai fighting back against the Mongol invasion. A game studio who is mainly known for making the Sly Cooper games and Infamous. I know, a crazy selection, right? I know I'm a bit late for a video essay on this game, given it came out almost exactly 5 years ago now, but I only ever played it first in February of last year, 2024. But with Ghost of Yotei on its way, I figure there isn't any other perfect time to talk about it. Fair warning for these videos, there will be massive spoilers throughout here, so if you don't want to know what happens, then click off and play the game for yourself. I strongly recommend it. This is also going to be divided into parts, as editing just Act 1 took well over my entire weekend, so please be patient for when I release the second and third acts. Also, I won't be including any side quests that don't include the main characters in these videos, as this part 1 is already long enough. So if there wasn't a side quest you really enjoyed talked about in here, just know that it isn't any hard feelings. I'm graduating next week, so I may need a bit more time for part 2 to come out, but without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy Ghost of Tsushima. Our game starts at Komura Beach, where our two main characters, Jin Sakai and our uncle Lord Shimura, arrive on horseback with their army behind them. We see a man named Lord Adachi confront the main villain in hopes he can challenge their strongest warrior, probably so he can attempt to intimidate the Mongols to drive them away. However, the game's antagonist, Khotun Khan, makes a quick fool out of him and brutally kills him in seconds, a theme we will see in him quite often. Immediately after this, we return to our warriors who storm the beach and fight our way through the Mongols. This pretty much serves as a combat tutorial for us, however I will go into more detail about the combat later, probably in part 2 or part 3 though. When we reach the end of the beach, we are confronted by the Khan again, and if anyone is thinking that this character looks familiar, fans of The Night at the Museum will notice that his actor Patrick Gallagher is the same man who played Attila the Hun in those movies. Despite his goofy role in that franchise, his performance in this game is stellar. He's genuinely intimidating at so many points while being a more calm and put-together villain who is surprisingly intelligent. After being taken out by a few arrows, we watch as the Khan tries to turn Lord Shimura against Tsushima and join his empire. After refusing in silence, the Khan knocks Shimura to the ground and we fade to black. When we come back, it focuses on Jin lying unconscious on the ground with the simple prompt, press X, wherein Jin clenches his fist with the notion to drive back the Khan, and now the real game begins. We find ourselves in Komata Town, not far from where the battle started. When we get up, we notice that not only is our gear missing, but the Mongols have successfully invaded Tsushima. When we sneak into another house and find our broken armor, we meet Yuna, a thief who also rescued us at Komata Beach. She helps us sneak through town to find our sword, which she sold for money after looting it off of us. At least she's nice enough to get it back. When we pick it up, we are reminded of the first time we sparred with our uncle, who gives us a proper introduction to combat, but also reminds us to not fight with our emotions, especially when defending ourselves. When we finish the spar, he asks us the most important parts of our code as samurai, with probably the most important being honor, as it helps the people of the land not fear us when we fight. With our Sakai Katana, we continue to exit Komata, but not before long we decide that we need better transportation to get around. So, we head to the stables and spot some Mongols. Yuna suggests we take them out quietly, to which Jin refuses as it does not honor the way of the samurai, another theme we see throughout the game. When we beat the Mongols, we are allowed to pick out a horse for ourselves, but before that, Yuna tells us about why she saved us. Her brother, Taka, was captured by the Mongols and was hoping we'd help her. We agree as long as she helps us with our uncle, to which she agrees. Back to the horses, I chose the Digital Deluxe option and named him Nobu, which means trust. Although each of the horses are beautiful, I just really like the light brown one, and Nobu will be alongside us for our entire journey. Moving on, we ride with Yuna all the way to Castle Kaneda where our uncle is being held. Now, I just want to point out that I had heard people thought that the game's combat was really easy, and so I wanted to challenge myself and play it on hard mode, since the last 2 times I played it, it was on normal. However, it would seem that I accidentally turned the game to easy when I switched low intensity combat on then off again, just to see what it did. Apparently, it turned my difficulty to easy without me knowing for the entirety of Act 1 before I realized. I know, whoops. But don't worry, as soon as Act 1 was being concluded, I put it at lethal just to make up for my actions. Not that it's that big of a deal, but you know. Regardless, we fight our way through the castle and arrive at a bridge where we legit fight the Khan and we kill him, and the game is over. Haha, I got you. I just lied to you. Anyways, he absolutely beats our ass, because of course he does, and throws us off the bridge into the water below. Jin Sakai is then reminded of the day his father died on Iki Island, when he watched him die. We see this flashback plenty of times later on, but we'll get to that. After seeing that, we are also given a vision of the day his funeral was held. Yoriko, who is one of the servants of the clan Sakai, tells us that we have to face everyone and that we aren't alone. She also tells us our father is the wind at our back. After splitting with us, we walk to our uncle, Lord Shimura, passing by other characters we will meet later, like Lady Masako and Sensei Ishikawa. When we approach Shimura, we find that Jin feels responsible for his father's death, to which Shimura tells us that he died protecting us, a warrior's death. He gives us our father's sword and tells us he is always with us. From this moment on, Jin is now being raised by Lord Shimura as his ward.
He is always with you. Tomorrow, you will come to my fortress as my ward. Today, say goodbye to your father.
When Jin comes out onto another beach, he falls to his knees, then is guided by the wind to his next objective, which I picked up this time as the wind being Jin's father, like how Yoriko said. And this objective is to find Yuna nearby and tell her what happened. They then talk about how they need to find new ways to stop the invasion since the Khan will expect every move they make. Mongols then appear, and after using some tall grass to hide in, they come to the conclusion that the Mongols are aware that Jin is alive and are hunting him. Jin says they need another way in, and Yuna mentions Taka. Her brother is a blacksmith who can make something to help with that, which we'll talk about later. But she heard he was captured near Keiichi, which will be the next time we see Yuna in search for Taka. At this point they depart and we experience the title card portion of the game, and Act 1 truly begins. Now we are allowed to explore the first part of Tsushima's open world as much as we want. And may I just say, in case you didn't know already, this game is absolutely gorgeous. I can't think of a single spot in the game that was ugly. The scenery, environmental storytelling, and overall vibe of the world is extremely pretty. There's also plenty of activities and collectibles you can find around the world too, like haikus, which lets you create, well, haikus about how Jin feels, hot springs, which allow you to reflect on events that happened to Jin in the past or during the events of the game, and bamboo challenges where you press a set number of buttons in a time limit to increase a resolve, so you can do more cool combat things or heal yourself. Follow foxes and climb Shinto shrines to get new charms to put on yourself to make combat or farming a little easier. You can also pet the foxes, so that already boosts the game up by a few points. There are a few more activities, but nothing you can really do right now. Around the island you can find small villages or farms that have been overrun by Mongols, and clearing them out will increase your legend, or level you up, and clear out a big portion of the map. Occasionally, these Mongol territories will have bosses at the end of them, wherein you have a duel that, over time, becomes more and more challenging. Returning back to the main story, though, we run back into Yuna right where she said we'd find her, right after being jumped by some Mongols. She tells us that she heard Keiichi had a blacksmith prisoner being escorted to the camp, which we hope to be Taka, and we head off on horseback right away. When we arrive, we have to survey the camp for an easy way to enter. Surveying and investigating areas for clues are another common feature of the game, kinda like the Arkham games in a way, where during certain missions you go through a few options on how to advance in said quest. Here, Jin puts his samurai thinking cap on and, like usual, suggests they go in head on. But Yuna hits him with reality. If they see or hear us coming, then the prisoners' lives are at stake. So she suggests we go in stealthily. Jin dislikes this idea as, once again, it goes against his code. Honor is everything to a samurai. They live and die by that code. But Jin comes to his senses and realizes that Yuna is right. We now unlock a new form of combat, stealth, which is pretty self-explanatory. But when Jin stabs the first guard in the back, he is once again reminded of his younger days, being taught by Lord Shimura about the way of the samurai. During a bear hunt, Shimura is attacked by a rebel from Yarikawa, who despises Shimura. He retaliates and cuts his arm off, triggering Jin to snap at the assassin and let his emotions take over again. Shimura reminds Jin that not only must you fight with honor, but a samurai must look his enemy in the eye when in combat.
We look them in the eye with courage and respect.
But when we return, we must continue through the camp to find the prisoners. Or prisoner, rather. After sneaking through, we find only one remaining prisoner who tells us that there was a blacksmith prisoner who fit Taka's description, but he was being transported to Azumo Bay. At this same time, we move to Shimura's perspective, who's still being held up in Castle Kaneda. Khotun Khan tells him that Jin is still alive, but that he's being hunted by the Mongols, but that he'd stop if Shimura sided with him. But Shimura still holds strong and doesn't give in to the Khan's offer, even if it will save lives. Returning back to Jin, we meet Yuna's friend Kenji, my favorite of the side characters, a swindler who loves fucking with the Mongols and saving his own ass, but still has a heart for his friends, Taka included. Kenji here is going to help us get into Azamo Bay and save Taka without being noticed. Although he and his ideas are a bit unorthodox, he means well in the worst way possible. The plan is to hop in a sake barrel and be wagoned into Azamo Bay to be served to the Mongols, only we'll hop out as soon as we arrive and sneak away. When we arrive, our goal is to find the slaver and follow him to where he's going. Thankfully, he goes straight to Taka. Before he kills Taka, Yuna takes him out, finally reuniting her with her brother. While the reunion is sweet, Taka is still shaken up by the enslavement, and we quickly make our way out of there. On the way though, the Mongols find the slaver's body and they go rampant, trying to find us, but we quickly get outside the walls and reunite with Kenji, riding as far away from Azamo as possible. When we find a stop, Taka thanks us for our help in rescuing him. Yuna is relieved that her brother is safe, and now our next goal is to dart over to Komatsu Forge, so Taka can make a tool to scale Castle Kanade's walls. And Yuna thanks us. Stepping away from that for now though, we need to go find new recruits for our storm on Castle Kaneda. If you remember from Lord Sakai's funeral, we had a small run-in with Lady Masako and Sensei Ishikawa there. First, our sensei, who have been attacked at his dojo. Following his footprints and some blood trails, we find him in his house with a bow readied and aimed at us, thinking we're intruders, before realizing we're students of his from the past. He tells us his student, Tomoe, has gone missing and wants our help locating her. Finding a campsite not too far away, we find her quiver, which was a gift from Sensei Ishikawa, which she would never leave behind, willingly. Assuming she was kidnapped, we head for Fort Nakayama. Along the way, we prepare for an ambush, where we learn about archery. Not too complex, but you will get cooler arrows for it later on, like fire and explosive arrows. When we arrive, the ambush commences, and we clear the fort and search for signs of Tomoe. While we search, we notice strange occurrences within the walls, like Japanese arrows fired with perfect precision, and a kimono hung up neatly as if they were being treated as equal to the Mongols. Suddenly, a surviving prisoner of the fort calls out for help. He tells us of a Japanese woman who helped the Mongols get better with archery in turn for her freedom, as long as she trained the Mongols. This turns out to be Tomoe, which Ishikawa tells us that she was the one who attacked him in his dojo, not bandits. This conversation tells us a lot about Ishikawa, and that he is a stubborn old man who just wants to clean up after the mess that he created. He feels at fault for his failure, but Jin won't let him do it alone. Ishikawa accepts his help as long as it's his way. Now, if I can be honest, Ishikawa's questline has always been my least favorite, because a lot of the missions tend to be a wild goose chase to find Tomoe, but they're still good. My personal favorite doesn't begin until Act 2, which starts almost immediately. Moving on, we find out from Ishikawa that Tomoe was a bandit he took in, which may explain her assault and turn on Ishikawa. We head to a watchtower to find more of Tomoe's target practice before getting ambushed. Ishikawa was aware of the Mongols in the tower, but just wanted to see what Jin was made of. Heading over to a small farm overrun by Mongols in search of Tomoe leads us to information that she is leading a Mongol attack on Hiyoshi Springs, where Ishikawa's dojo lies not far from. Given that Ishikawa is also a samurai, one who wasn't at Komoda Beach, he heavily disagrees with the fighting style we performed at the farmstead. However much Jin agrees with the samurai code, he realizes that this enemy is not like any other they faced. Ishikawa is afraid of making another Tomoe, but Jin is sure that that won't happen. When they move back to the dojo, Ishikawa tells us about how archers have been murdering travelers going in and out of Hiyoshi Springs, likely the very same archers Tomoe trained. Jin surveys the land and they both pinpoint the locations of the Mongol archers. We head to the areas where we figured they'd be, take them out, and ensure the safety of Hiyoshi Springs for another day. When we get the last group down to their captain, he delivers a message from Tomoe, threatening Hiyoshi Springs and mocking Ishikawa about another famous student he taught, Hironori Nagao. They once again split up before their last defense for Hiyoshi Springs. Wondering why, Jin asks Ishikawa why Tomoe would attack Hiyoshi Springs, and the sensei says it's because he was born here. Wiping it out not only would prove her worth, but could impact Ishikawa's morale as well. Just then, they're jumped by Mongol archers sent by Tomoe. Wiping them out once again leads us back to our defense for Hiyoshi Springs. We stand and wait on the north side of town and ambush the Mongols before they can touch the springs. After we're done with cleanup, Ishikawa spots Tomoe above the cliff burning the Nagao banners, then runs off. We then see a conversation between Ishikawa and Jin about the reality of Hironori Nagao's death. The legend is that he died fighting bandits, but in reality, he turned against the code and used his skill for more nefarious purposes, being slain by the rest of his clan, Clan Nagao. Ishikawa views it as his first and worst failure, worse than even Tomoe. Hironori Nagao's story was told to Tomoe, which Ishikawa thought would be a way for them to connect as teacher and student, but it didn't work out, obviously. Jin reassures him that even though he had failures in the past, he succeeded today as the savior for Hiyoshi Springs. However, this plotline will have to be left alone until Act 2. On to our next recruit, Lady Masako, the wife of the man who was killed by the Khan in the intro. When we arrive at the Adachi estate, however, not only is it abandoned, but bandits have attacked the estate. Following horse tracks that lead out of the estate, we run into Masako, who is distraught about what happened to her family. It's here where she finds out that her husband died at Komoda. It is also here that we find out that the entirety of Clan Adachi, aside from Lady Masako, is dead. Not by Mongols, but by Tsushima's own people, traitors. Basically, the entirety of this quest line is finding out the culprit of this attack. Relating to Masako, Jin agrees to help track down her family's killers. Hellbent on revenge, Lady Masako and Jin head out to the Golden Temple where Masako hopes to find a lead. She gives us a few tasks in the temple to do. Find the armorer for the samurai clan armor, and to find Sogen, as she suspects him of conspiring against her clan. After a very suspicious conversation with Sogen, Jin and Masako trail him all the way back to where his gang of bandits are held up. He tells the bandits that Jin and Masako are onto them. Killing the bandits, we corner Sogen in the house, only to find out he was just a messenger. Masako, rightfully so, kills him before we can get any information out of him, but we do find a list of names with Sogen's name on it, and a symbol that Lady Masako has seen before. The list tells us of a man named Sadao, who we need to find, but Masako knows how to find his brother, Hachi, who we trail in hopes to find Sadao. Hachi hands something to a couple of bandits, and we decide to trail the bandits instead, back to a homestead. There are bandits we have to kill here, of course, and inside a house is a woman named Hina, Sadao's wife. She claims innocence for her husband, but Masako just isn't believing her. Jin, however, insists on letting her live and getting information out of her. Masako agrees to take Hina back to her home and question her, but Hina fears Masako so much that she won't say anything to her. But Jin approaches with a more calm approach. He tells Hina that Hachi has been delivering messages for Sadao and that Masako will find out soon enough, but he will do his best to save her husband's life. Masako doesn't like this, but she doesn't have any choice. Jin and Masako go to the cliff, and Masako reminisces over her grandchildren and how she misses the music they would play. Jin whips out his flute and plays some music to calm her down a little, but not before long, Hina screams, and they rush over to find her dead. They track the killers down to a cemetery where Hachi is, but Hachi was already dying and claims he killed her so he would live. But it was in vain. His body, however, holds a map of Hachi's supply routes, so our next goal is to find a monk who can read the maps and locate Sadao. Meanwhile, Masako leaves to bury Hina as it's all she can do to repay her. We head to a camp in Ariake where we find Junshin, a monk we met at the Golden Temple. We give him the map and he says it's used for delivering food, and that it shows the lighthouse, which Masako gives some insight onto who built it. Her and her family. The lighthouse is of course riddled with bandits and we have to clear them out, while Sadao is waiting at the top, like a cornered rat. Climbing it, we hear verbal fighting and then a scream.
Masako.
He helped kill everyone I loved. And for what? To satisfy his pathetic hatred?
When the Mongols defeated the samurai, I wanted to die with them. I threw myself into a battle I knew I couldn't win. It was easier.
How do you survive?
I remember that I have people to protect, and the dead to avenge.
With Sadao dead, whoever is responsible will hear that I'm alive and hunting. They'll become afraid, make a mistake.
Just be careful, Masako.
You too. You are a part of this now.
The hunt will continue once we enter Act 2, but now we find ourselves at Komatsu Forge. Immediately upon entering Komatsu, the town seems barren at first, but it isn't long before we find Mongols fighting none other than Yuna. Trying to protect what's left of Komatsu, she informs Jin about the civilians being held prisoner. If they weren't killed or in captivity, all who remain are those that can't even defend themselves. Guiding us to her brother, Taka, Jin expresses his desire for a tool to help him infiltrate safely into Castle Kaneda to rescue Lord Shimura. Taka would be absolutely honored to help, but not by himself. His assistant, Yukio, left to find his family, who we need to save in order to keep harm away from Komatsu. Once we save and escort Yukio's family to the forge, Taka tells us how Yuno left to help save a family she and Taka were close to when they were younger. Once they're safe, the forge is ready to be lit, even though the Mongols will be alerted. With the knowledge that the forge itself will stay undamaged, we lure them in and prepare to strike. Cutting them down was a breeze. Felt like nothing to Jin. But to the townspeople who watched him do it, it means everything. A sliver of hope in this dangerous war they face. However, seeing the reactions of everyone, both Jin and Yuna's mood switch, Jin thinks they'll fear him for fighting differently from a samurai. But Yuna, well, I think she says it best herself.
It was nothing.
You are more than a samurai. He is a vengeful spirit, back from the grave to slaughter the Mongols.
Where do we hide now? You don't. Fire up a forge, and get back to making strong Komatsu weapons. That's how we fight back. That's how we'll save Lord Shimura. Vengeful spirit?
I think they liked it.
Returning to Castle Kaneda, Khotun Khan faces Shimura in another conversation in hopes of turning him against his island. However, this time he tells him of Jin's way of fighting, how it dishonors the way of the samurai. Shimura refuses this truth, but the Khan doesn't back down. Thinking this will have them join forces, he asks him to reconsider his offer. But Shimura sees through his lies to see his true plan. As stubborn as he is, the Khan still persists in threatening Jin's life for Shimura's freedom. Jin still needs one last ally in order to storm the gates of Castle Kaneda. His aim is to hire the Straw Hat Ronins. No, not those Straw Hats. Following a trail of dead Mongols, we find a Mongol crawling away from a stray Straw Hat lying on the ground. After we investigate it, a Mongol tries to attack us, but is struck down by a Straw Hat. But not just any Straw Hat, an old friend of Jin's, Ryuzo. Another one of my favorite side characters. These two childhood friends grew up together, but were likely separated once Jin became a samurai. Shocked to find out his best friend became a mercenary, he asks if the leader of the Straw Hats is around, but they don't have one. He died at Komoda Beach. When he asks for Ryuzo and the Straw Hats to help in his endeavors to save Shimura, Ryuzo declines at first due to his men being low on resources and nearly starving to death. Jin, with the prior mercenary knowledge, tells him that if they succeed in saving Shimura, then he'll pay them in whatever they want. As acting leader for the Straw Hat Ronin, Ryuzo gives in to the offer. At that moment, however, a horde of Mongols show up, and so the two friends have to fight alongside each other for the first time in years. When the fight is over, Ryuzo decides that he can't risk his men's lives for Shimura due to how malnourished they are. Jin insists he go with them to the Straw Hats' camp to figure something out. The plan they come up with, and the plan Jin presents to the Straw Hat camp, is that they will be raiding Fort Ohira, a farm along the coast, for all the food they have and give it to the Straw Hats for survival. The Straw Hats, however, are skeptical to listen to anyone who isn't their leader, or a Straw Hat. So Ryuzo gives him the Ronin fit, and they have a little back and forth banter. Ryuzo tells Jin that if they succeed in getting the food from the fort, then he'll help at Kaneda. They plan to meet up at the cemetery near the fort with all the Ronin who are well enough to fight. The goal for attacking the fort is to sneak into the lighthouse, climb up the ladder, and light it to distract the Mongols so the Straw Hats have an opportunity to attack. Once the fort is empty, they search the fort, but find nothing around. They do find a scroll in Chinese that Jin is thankfully able to read thanks to Sun Tzu. The scroll says there is food, but it's being transported off the island. While they sneak down to the coast, Ryuzo comments on Jin's fighting style, which tells us how Jin used to fight when they were young. But before they talk any further, they have to signal the men to rain fire arrows onto the explosive barrels, so they can cause a distraction to safely row to the large boats with the food. Once on board, they search the first boat but find nothing. The second, however, has some war plans. Suddenly, we hear Ryuzo is struggling in battle. When the boats are cleared, we're shot at and have to abandon ship, sadly leaving behind the food we worked so hard to get. With Ryuzo distraught over his men's well-being, Jin shares some potentially good news with him, the war plans we found before. In hopes this plan works out, Ryuzo takes the plans and they depart so Ryuzo can feed his men. Returning to Yuna in Komatsu, Jin suspects her of spreading more stories about him, so much so that the people around town are referring to him as the Ghost, which Jin isn't exactly ecstatic about. Regardless, he lets Yuna know about the people he has been able to recruit for the storm on Castle Kaneda, while they go to pick up Taka's new tool for Jin, the Iron Hook, a grappling hook that is very fun to swing around with and the most important item to infiltrate the castle. Jin, who is very thankful for this, says he's in Taka's debt, but Taka doesn't want anything in return. It's a gift. He has everything he needs. Interrupting this lightheartedness, Ryuzo arrives looking for Jin. Apparently the Mongols have kidnapped a handful of the most skilled Ronin near Fort Yatate. Considering we need all the help we can get, Jin of course goes to help Ryuzo free his men. When we meet up with his other men, Ryuzo is informed of two other Straw Hats who were too scared to keep fighting, and deserted them. While Ryuzo is outraged with the cowardice of his men, Jin reassures him that we still have plenty of men for the job. Without any more delay, we ride for Fort Yatate. Since we can't just go through the front doors, they need another way around. With the Iron Hook, this becomes an easy feat, swinging across branches and grabbing onto sturdy stumps. On the way here, Ryuzo mentioned that his men had been singing while imprisoned, which we hear firsthand to be true. Once freed, we signal Ryuzo, open the front gate, and pincer the Mongols so they cannot escape. After the Mongols of Fort Yatate have been eradicated, we talk with Ryuzo about what he heard from his men while they were imprisoned. They were never harmed, but were instead fed by the Mongols, which may explain the singing they were doing while they were here. The only reason they came up with is that the Mongols had hoped for something in return. But with everything said and done, before we finish Act 1, we have one last side quest to finish. Kenji. Kenji. Always up to something. Jin asks him what he's doing in a town like this. Kenji says that the Mongols have been stealing food from this town and that he genuinely wants to help. Without the knowledge of where the Mongols' camp is, however, they're at an impasse. Without the possibility of an ambush attack, given that they have hostages, we're short on ideas. But Kenji does have one idea nonetheless. Once again, Jin is supposed to hop inside a container and have him shipped to the camp. While in the barrel, we hear the Mongols about to take Kenji's horse as well. While it may be deserved, his plan does work and we exit the barrel at the Mongols' camp. Silently executing them so that they don't attack the hostages, we eventually clear out the camp. Upon doing so, one of the hostages tells us that this was all Kenji's fault. Kenji, with perfect timing as always, shows up just in time for us to interrogate him. Kenji tells us that instead of giving the Mongols food, he sent them wood chips and straw instead, which angered them into kidnapping the villagers. While his intentions were good, he clearly didn't plan that far ahead. With the notion that Kenji wants to do better, but needs a bit of practice, Jin tells him not to do it in such extreme environments. Back to the finale of Act 1, we arrive in Komatsu one last time to meet Yuna, who Jin expected to have left the island as soon as Taka finished with the hook. Yuna loves the idea of leaving the island, but she tells him she only stayed to pay back Jin for saving her brother. Now that we have everyone and more, we're ready to storm Castle Kaneda, with one last glimpse of Shimura's point of view. The Khan tells him more of Jin's animalistic ways of combat. Shimura counters this and tells him that he believes that the Khan is worse than an animal. But the Khan thinks he's the same as Shimura, both desiring a legacy that is told throughout the generations. Shimura doesn't deny these accusations, but tells him that they're for different reasons, as he wants his legacy to be praised with honor. Now that Jin is on their front doorstep, the Khan tells Shimura that his very own castle is next for the taking. Castle Shimura. His home will soon belong to the enemy, while he starves to death in this castle. Only hours later, everyone is here. Only Ryuzo and the Straw Hats are nowhere to be seen. Considering they've waited long enough, they run through their plan to rescue Lord Shimura. Jin will find a way in with his hook and open the gates from the inside. Ishikawa, being the samurai that he is, thinks this plan is insane, and that we'd be thieves if we do it this way. But Yuna says he'd be more like a ghost. It was at this moment where I realized that the difficulty was lowered to easy, and so from now on I did actually play the game with an actual challenge. Oops, my bad. Regardless, we sneak in and get rid of the alarms so nothing sounds for when we make our way up to the real part of the castle. Jin and Lady Masako head on to clear the path before we meet up with Yuna for crossing the bridge. With hopes that Lady Masako can pilot the huasha they have, we clear out all the enemies that block the path so she can work it without trouble. After meeting up with Yuna, we take out a few more Mongols, then cross the bridge we were tossed from at the start of the game. Of course, the gate is locked and we need to grapple around to find a way in to open it for her. Once we do, we continue on to find a familiar face.
Ryuzo.
The Khan put a bounty on the ghost. Anyone can claim it.
You wouldn't.
My men are starving, Jin.
Help me save my uncle, and he will reward your men. He will make you samurai.
Then he'll send us to die. Just like he did at Komoda Beach.
Ryuzo,
He's your family, Jin. I need to protect mine.
With the betrayal of a close friend, we now have to fight a very emotional battle. A duel not between enemies, but friends who have two different goals. Only after defeating him do we get a glimpse at his real feelings, that he thinks the island of Tsushima is done for, that he's doing what he can to survive.
It's not too late. Help me save our home.
It belongs to them now.
Ryuzo. He's here! The samurai is here!
We fight our way through the last of them and we run into the pagoda that houses Shimura. He is at the top floor, so the gauntlet of cutting down Mongols doesn't end until we reach the top. When we get there, he expresses his appreciation and tells us how proud our father would be. With no more time to waste, he tells us where the Khan is headed, and that we need to vanquish what is left of the Mongols in Castle Kaneda. With not just 2 samurai, but with plenty of warriors we have found on our journey to free Lord Shimura, we eradicate everyone else who stands in our way. The last of them come barging through the gates, but our force stands strong and defends the castle with everything we've got. With the Mongols finally gone and the castle finally ours, we celebrate our victory over the Mongols and can finally rest easy, knowing Lord Shimura is safe. Far up north, however, we see the atrocities that Khotun Khan is about to do to get his way into Castle Shimura, demanding entry into the castle in exchange for the lives of innocent people by burning them alive. However, even more messed up is that he forces Ryuzo to kill his own people, instead of doing it himself, also that Ryuzo's men can get food.
Let them in!
No! Open the gate! Open the gate! Open the gate! Open the gate!
Now, the Khan has successfully taken Castle Shimura. And with that, this is the end of Act 1, and therefore this video. Like I said in the beginning, I'll be working on part 2 as soon as I can, but I really need to work on my graduation and moving away. Sorry if my voice sounded a bit robotic at times, but I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if so, please let me know by doing the whole YouTube song and dance. Goodbye, and good night, everyone.